Sandman Nation, welcome. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. We're the St. Louis Syndicate, and we're here to talk about the NFL draft, and we're going to go division by division. We're going to start this out with some fun for you guys. We're going to break down the worst division in football, Brandon, the NFC South.
Yes.
We're going to cover each team, and we're going to give you our own flavor, right? You're going to get a little bit of Brandon's opinion. You're getting a little bit of my opinion. We each took two teams. We're going to give you our breakdown on that. They're going to be a little different, right? We're different people, different thoughts, but I think at the end of the day, you're going to get some football analysis, and it should give you an idea of things like over-unders, potential wins, losses, free agent movement to date. I mean, at this point, free agents are moving like crazy everywhere, Brandon. And then really what they're looking at in the draft. What do you think, Brandon? You ready to jump in, or you been doing any other sport watching this week?
I've been watching some basketball, been watching some world baseball as well.
Man, no kidding.
That was some exciting stuff. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that for a minute, but last night was exciting with
Mexico
the
and Italy.
Americans being confused about whether they were on to the next round or not.
Yeah.
And so, that was fun. And then at the same time, they're down in Miami with Venezuela and the DR going head to head. Like it's the biggest game of the year for those two teams. So that was exciting last night. And then what we had, old boy from Miami put up 83 points.
Oh, I
hack
know.
a shack in his way. Bam, you just watching all of that happen in the same night. Because that was the night before. Americans lose to Italy, find out that they're not guaranteed to get through. We got basketball breaking in to nationally televised games to watch some dude go for the modern day record. And then at the same time, they're shipping Max Crosby back to the desert because they figured out a way to get Trey Henderson for cheapers.
Yeah.
It's been an exciting week sports-wise around here, and we're about to ramp up to March Madness. So, football's gone. It's not the best time of the sports calendar, but it's been exciting.
It's been crazy. As a football guy, how the NFL free agency has mixed in during spring training, during March Madness, it actually is keeping me interested and glued to the TV. And I'm telling you, is Adam Scheffler like the most popular Twitter handle in the world? I mean, I swear every time he pops up, I'm like, what happened? What happened? There's Sheffy out there. Man, who's going to take his job in 20 years or 15 years, whenever? I mean, who does he know at these places to get this early inside information?
It's just, it doesn't hurt working for the mothership
Right.
because, everybody that's got the ESPN app on their phone gets his messages like beamed straight to them. I mean, that's the sneaky, the biggest thing that ESPN has done in the new tech era. Like their app's fine. It works okay, whatever. But to go, hey, if we can get everybody to download something that'll tell them what the scores are, we can just fire news to them all day. Just anytime you just look down and you got just a screen full of notifications of people moving around. And so, I don't know how you get to be the next guy. I'm assuming there's some people out there right now on Twitter building their way up, but I guess you just have to wait for them to go away, right? Rose just eventually went, I'm too old for being awake all the time and never leaving my phone anywhere. That's really what it turns into. I can't,
Right.
One of the lower wrong insider guys, I heard him talking the other day and he was just like, I haven't been in a room that my phone wasn't in for like a decade or something like that. And you just go, I get it. You guys are all well compensated for that, but like, it's got to be exhausting.
Oh,
to just like, it's almost like being an agent or something. Like you're just on call
all the time,
every minute of every day.
All the time.
So
it's unbelievable.
It's an exciting time. But what they had, What was I watching? Oh, it was Orlovsky and Peter Schrager, and they just had them kind of shoved off in their own little room on the set with like screens all around them on, I guess, the day before, whenever free agency opened. I flip on ESPN and they just keep jumping over, and it's the two of them in there, moving stuff around on screens, and you just go, okay, everybody's turned into an insider now. So
Yeah,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see um the next person to kind of figure out how to have a come up.
it'll be crazy. It'll be crazy. So next week this week we're going to talk about the NFC South. Next week we're going to talk about the AFC East, and we'll give you our college football or college basketball predictions. The field will be set. As I sit here, I'm watching the Georgia players freak out in the SEC tournament because they're getting beat by Ole Miss right at the moment, and down to the last seconds, and they're just fans are doing this kind of stuff, and it's like I'm like, it's the conference tournament. You're both going to get in. Goodness gracious! But we'll talk about who's going to dance a little bit, and we'll give you a 5-minute sneak preview on what we think. Not that you care what a bunch of football guys think, but hey, that's just how this works. So,
Oh yeah.
Brandon, I think you're going to kick us off. We're going to start with not the worst team in the league, but one on the lower side of the NFC South. The one team that didn't go 8-9 last year. Um,
Right.
the New Orleans Saints. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's go for it, man.
Yeah, these guys maybe on the come up, right? We end last year. They win 5 of their last 8. They win 4 of their last 5. They end the season at 6-11, but Shuck clearly grew over that time period. They finally let him in the games, got his feet under him. He started figuring out how to run the offense. They kind of got moving in the right direction. So they seemingly have some sort of plan, right? Like we're 2 days into free agency and they've signed 2 different tight ends, brought in Noah Fant, brought in offensive linemen, brought in a new punter, brought in Caden Ellis, outside linebacker, and brought in Travis Etienne to shore up the backfield. That's pointing to potentially move Kamara somewhere, right? I don't know. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if they get stuck with 2 running backs, especially with them doing 2 separate things, right? Like Kamara is kind of that. I mean, you could literally just take him and go, we're not going to play him out of the backfield anymore. Like he's just going to be a split off the ball, out wide sort of situation where we're just going to use him in space. Because it sounds like probably, I just lost his name. Who's our guy from BYU? Quarterback, tight end, gadget player.
Taysom Hill.
Yeah, Taysom Hill. It sounds like he's probably out of there. And Kamara might be right behind him. But it sounds like they finally have this plan of like, hey, they re-signed another one of their offensive linemen. They got John Ridgeway, one of their defensive tackles. They got those guys re-signed. They let several guys walk back up center, several guys on the defense. The punter that they had traded him off to Houston for a pick swap in a couple of years. They have been doing work to get prepared for this draft. Now, we start looking at over-unders. They're still at 7.5. Now, obviously, being at 6 wins and getting those almost all on the back half of the year, obviously low limits, everybody that's betting into the market at this point is just helping them firm up numbers. And the fact that it's March and you're tying up your money until January of next year, it's a hard thing to just decide that you think you have an edge there and want to get after it. But that 7.5 to me seems like something that's probably going to end up getting bet up if they do anything reasonable going into the draft. They've got plenty of picks. They got plenty of cap space. They have the quarterback that they're going to roll with. You know,
Yeah.
I'm on the fence about the whole situation, but he seems like he at least, call him the top half of the quarterbacks that aren't elite. You
Yeah.
know, he's definitely going to be good for the year, and it's going to put them in a position where they can go out there, they could draft some people. I hope offensive line. Anytime your team's bad, you can always look for. Hopefully, they go out there and find the right offensive lineman to give them some more time to process what's going on. But this puts them in a position where, hopefully that number doesn't rise too much. We get much closer to the start of the season, and it's much more reasonable to buy in above that 7.5, maybe 8, and take a flyer on these guys moving up the ladder in the NFC South.
Yeah. I really kind of agree with your assessment of them moving up in the NFC South. For a couple of reasons. I think you brought up a couple interesting points, and then just based off of my stupid Dallas Cowboy knowledge, their coach Kellen Moore is really going to be his. I don't want to say his first. Let's call it 1.0, 1.1 off season because he kind of was a late hire, if I recall, last
Yeah,
year. And
it was.
some of the pieces he didn't get everything that he wanted from his shopping cart, right? So if you're a follower of Bill Parcells, he likes to shop for the groceries, and Moore didn't get to do that. But Kellen Moore is notorious in Dallas Cowboys lore for always never having a running back. He always had two, and he used the two back system. So I could completely see um, and ETN running together in this system and actually working out just fine. That was
Yeah.
never one of the Cowboys' big downfalls. Their running game was always fairly solid, but it was always hinged on offensive linemen. So I would be curious, from a draft perspective to see, are they going to attack a bunch of offensive linemen? Did you happen to see, and I didn't pull it up, but did you happen to see if they, in free agency, have they signed any offensive linemen yet? Or are they still just kind of
They have.
running backs and tight ends? And
No, they grabbed David Edwards um, on the offensive line. They re-signed Dylan Radins,
yeah,
um, and they've really only let go of their backup center.
yeah,
So they kept one their free agent, and they went out and got one extra guy. But I definitely, like, when you go out and you go, hey, I've got a young quarterback, and I'm going to spend the money on NTN. That points me in the direction of the team is looking to build around being able to run.
yeah,
So it seems to me that they must have a sufficient plan to go, we like a couple of these offensive linemen. Maybe we can go get one of them. So
yeah.
that's where my head goes immediately.
Yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. With the eighth pick, any idea of, do you think they're going to line wide receiver up, interior offensive lineman? I mean, just kind of thinking about it out loud. We haven't heard much about the defense. Um, I don't know.
No, and
If we want them to make that move, Kellen Moore's an offensive minded guy, right? It's going to end up in the Jerry Jones philosophy, right? Where you buy all these offensive players and then you can't stop a runny nose. I worry about
well, and
that
that
with
seems like
Kellen
that's
Moore.
also New Orleans history
Yeah,
is, hey, we get a couple of pieces. It hopefully pins the defense together, but it definitely feels like with Olave still there and going out and bolstering what they've got at tight end, that it sounds like they're focused on moving that direction.
yeah,
I don't really know. This early with this bad of teams, it's hard for me to go, hey, I really think they should focus on this one spot until there starts to be some reporting of, hey, this is really what we're thinking about.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because they really have a hole everywhere other than quarterback and running back at this point. Like you can use a top flight guy. So if somebody starts to fall, basically everybody except for, the top running backs are going to be in play when they get around to their pick that,
Yeah.
especially with the way that this draft is set up, where there's a bunch of guys that are not necessarily elite positions, but they are elite at their position. It's really going to depend on, in hindsight, we're probably going to find out that they had, going back to what we talked about last week, that hey, when we actually interviewed these guys, this is the guy that stood out to us
Yeah.
and not the other teams. And then we got around to him falling to us and we were able to grab the guy we wanted.
Yeah, I almost see them unless there's somebody in front of them, and I guess I need to get the complete draft order up in front of me. That'd probably be my smartest thing to do. But knowing they need a wide receiver, it's possible Carnell Tate slips to them at 8 if they wanted to take a wide receiver, and he would be a really good matchup with Olave.
Well, absolutely. I,
If
like
you know,
to
just
be able to
just
bring in,
brainstorming because they're not going to go after a tight end,
yeah,
right? They're not going to go after Sadiq. They're not going to go after Eli
no,
Showers. Their free agency moves told us that.
right. No, I think that we're in that position where, they're either going to be in the headspace where like we need to shore up the lines and they've got somebody picked out, take one side of the ball. Or I think that wide receiver or defensive back, some sort of splashy, guy that can grow with become a new face. I mean, like that's really what they're trying to turn over, right? That like, hey, maybe Shuck ends up being a guy that could be a face of the team. But if not, you're really, they've had distinct faces of the team for so long. And that's kind of New Orleans been their thing, right? Since Breeze was, since they basically went and got Breeze.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, you're probably in search of, hey, who is the person that's going to kind of tie this together and get everybody excited to go into the next season
Yeah.
from a fan perspective.
Absolutely. I love it. Good stuff, man. Anything else on the Saints you want to share before I jump over to the Falcons?
No, no, let's jump to the Falcons.
Kind of going in reverse order. The Falcons, are finished third in the division. Saints finished last. Falcons are projected, early projections at 7.5 as their over under, with plus money going to the over, fading to the under. So not a lot of believers out there. And Brandon, you made a comment earlier in our pregame that I thought was pretty awesome. Who the hell's gonna be the left-handed quarterback that throws the ball around there? They just signed Tua. A stiff wind's gonna put him in concussion protocol, as you duly noted. Penix isn't healthy,
Yeah.
and Kirk Cousins was a cap casualty. So Atlanta leaning to the under of 7.5 is possibly where we're looking. If a team like New Orleans is going to get up over, then somebody's got to come
Yeah.
back, right? It can't all be over.
Right.
Uh, it's potential
Nope.
Atlanta's going to take a half a step back just because they're not quite ready. Now they've got good pieces to the puzzle, but it's pretty interesting taking a look at Atlanta. The one thing that jumps off the page at me is Atlanta doesn't have a first round pick. So they've had to go out and do some things in free agency because they're not going to have a first round pick. They've done a couple things so far. They picked up Tua, which is technically a need. They did sign Jahan Dotson because receiver is one of the things that they need to operate opposite of Drake London, which is pretty interesting. They did pick up Zacchaeus out of the Bears also as a wide receiver to run in that 3 hole. So they're trying to shore up their offense, you can tell. They picked up tight end Austin Hooper to run alongside Pitts because Pitts they franchise tagged, so he's not going to be there forever. And then they've picked up a little bit of some defense, right? Edge, defensive end, defensive tackle, linebacker. They did sign Nick Folk. They've had a kicker problem in Atlanta for quite a while now, even going back to Koo. So maybe Folk can help them solve that. And they signed Jake Bailey to a free agent deal as a punter. So they've been active in the first few days of free agency and signed quite a few guys. And I think that's because their first pick is number 48. That's a significant fall off for a team that wants to win more than 8 games, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. And it really helps being able to get, an aging quarterback that's eating up a big chunk of salary out the door and free up some space where you can go get some people in free agency where when you don't pick until halfway through the second round.
Oh yeah, it's brutal. Absolutely brutal. Doing a little bit of analysis, they don't have a great cornerback situation, and they've got AJ Terrell. He's their only proven corner. They don't have any depth in the secondary, and their defensive line and pass rush is bad. So they are going to need to definitely get some upgrade in the defensive backs. Now, they have not done anything. They've done edge, defensive end, and defensive tackle. So when I look at what they need defensive linemen. They've kind of addressed that in free agency, which means I think they're going to go corner early. They may try to go wide receiver, but the signing of Jahan Dotson, I don't know if that's necessary. It's going to depend on, I guess, probably one of the best available players to them at that round 2 pick. Who's it going to be? Are we going to get all the way down? What players are going to be there? I keep hearing this Zachariah Branch is the guy that's going to be one of the top day 2 receivers available. And he's out of Georgia, and he is elite. He's got some good speed. He's a good threat. Omar Cooper out of Indiana was a big physical receiver, and we talked about him a little bit. He could be available for the Falcons around that area. I have to believe somebody's going to probably take that Cooper beforehand just because of who he is. But looking for a defensive back is really going to be critical. And I've been looking and looking and looking at my data for the Falcons, and I don't have a great cornerback option for them in the draft. They just don't have anybody that I really love thinking, hey, this is who they're going to get. And even the talking heads who are, out there, they keep talking about wide receivers and stuff because I did a little research. I want to see who's the people in Atlanta talking about who's the talking heads on
Yeah.
ESPN. We were just talking about them. They keep talking about like Zachariah Branch out of Georgia and Chris Purcell out of Tennessee and Cooper out of Indiana. All three amazing receivers. All three going to be probably second round guys, going to really make some teams better and get some value. Why is Atlanta with Jahan Dotson and Drake London and no defensive backs going to focus on that? I don't know. I think that's something that I would be interested to see how this plays out.
Well, they do love signing a guy in free agency and then drafting a guy to play the same position.
They have a history of this. They do.
So, for all we know, they could figure out a way to trade up and take Love and just
Right.
stand him next to Bijan for all I know at this point. They could just be
Yeah.
collecting offensive skill players like Infinity Stones down there.
Man, they do. And they can't do shit with them. They have some of the best
No.
offensive players. I mean, going all the way back to when they had Ritter and he had all these toys everywhere and he couldn't throw the ball 7 yards. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. They couldn't get the ball to London. They couldn't get the ball to Drake. They had Cordell Patterson running around like crazy out there. They couldn't do
Yeah.
anything.
You
Unbelievable.
don't want to go that like, hey, like their coaches can't get a plan put together, but it sure seems like that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's hard to just put it at the foot of people that do this for a living to go, do you guys not understand how this sport works? But they do year in and year out make you question that.
Oh, absolutely. So as far as the Falcons go, I don't see anything jumping off the page at me that, couple of defensive cornerbacks that are out there. We'll talk more about who to pick in the draft and where they're going to go later on. Couple guys on the page are Will Johnson out of Michigan and Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. And I've seen Tacario Davis out of Arizona in 3 or 4 different things. What I tried to do is when I was doing my research, just trying to find some consistent names that kept popping up. And those are some of them that are popping up. So if you're interested in looking at that, you can. Tacario Davis may go a little bit early depending on other teams' needs in front of him. He's probably the highest ranked guy on the page there. So just some things to think about in terms of the Falcons, and if you're doing any bets on the draft. We know that that's a thing as well, and we're going to probably, talk a little bit more about that each week as we go. Potential draft strategy, things of that nature, and we'll do our mock draft as well. So, stay tuned for that here in a few weeks. But we're going to try to give you a few of these updates as we go ahead. Brandon, I think that's all I've got on the Falcons. You got anything you want to add, or you want to jump on to the Tampa Bay
No.
Buccaneers?
Let's jump on over to our second 8 and 9 team in the division, and technically second place, our Tampa Bay Bucs. Who doesn't love themselves some Baker Mayfield?
Oh,
Uh, Unfortunately,
apparently Mike Evans.
he spends the first couple of weeks almost being decapitated, and then they go on a streak where they only win 2 of their last 9 games to fall all the way back out of contention. They go, what? We start the season 6-2, and then end up 8-9. So clearly, they have injury problems, right? Baker's always busted up. Evans is hurt. Godwin's hurt. Luckily, they have just an unending list of wide receivers. So they just keep running guys out there, almost making it work, and eventually fall apart. And the season, with their offense being the 14th best rated offense, but having the 21st rated defense. So they have been quite a bit quieter here at the beginning of the year. They've let Mike Evans, biggest signing probably so far in my mind. I mean, I guess Hendrickson, going and the whole Crosby thing like that kind
Yeah,
of became its own living situation.
yeah,
But
for sure.
Evans picking up after being in Tampa for 12 years and going, I'm out of here. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm going to duke it out with the power plant and see if I can stay healthy. And then along with it, they let Jamil Dean, Logan Hall, Rashad White, Bridgewater left. They cleared out some of the names even on the team that like people have heard of, and they brought in Kenneth Gainwell and Miles Killebrew from Pittsburgh. They kind of, backfilled Rashad White leaving, picked up a new safety. Alex Alonso brought him in from Detroit, and then Al Quain Muhammad, both from Detroit, help with that defensive side of the ball, and they re-signed Kate Otten. So keep the tight end, pick up 3 guys on the defensive side. So hopefully, they're moving in the direction of shoring up, being able to, get off the field, get the ball back in Baker's hands. Hope that Baker can stay, healthy. But realistically, they're still being projected as an 8.5 win team. There's some juice to the upside. They're minus 120 on the over. And, so right now they're kind of being lined out as a team that's probably going to win the division. But I really think it kind of all hangs on the shoulder of Baker. He stays healthy. And I guess Godwin and Ibeka as well. You got to keep those guys healthy so that the 3 of them can kind of work together and bring back that high-flying offense that they have kind of been able to have sparks of when they've got healthy guys. So Tampa being right smack dab in the middle of the first round, they're taking 15th. That's, when you start looking at these ranges, that kind of puts them right there in some good defensive players. We got some quarterbacks here, Rod McCoy and Delane coming out of LSU. We got some edge guys, Ruben Bain Jr., TJ Parker coming out of Miami and Clemson. That, kind of a grouping right there in that late teens that, they've got the offense. Again, maybe, offensive lineman falls that they really like, and they go, hey, we're going to shore it up, see if we can keep Baker upright a little bit more. But hopefully we can keep them staying away from running backs, tight ends, wide receivers They got plenty of those guys running around. You need some guys that can rush the passer, can create some, you know, turnovers, or can hold down some of these defense, especially since you're going to play 6 games a year against the rest of this division. That ain't any good ultimately.
Lock
Some
them down
guys may
with
be on the
defense.
come up. Yeah, but these are not top flight teams. When and the entire division's only supposed to win 30 games total.
Ugh.
Um, this is not play some slightly above average defense, and you can start separating yourself at least from the rest of your division. Who knows when you get to the playoffs? You can figure it out then, but don't get yourself in this situation where you're going 8-9 with Carolina and Atlanta again. But yeah, no, for me, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure for them to focus on that defensive side of the ball and shore up what they're looking at outside of just talent falling that nobody's planning on.
Yeah. I can maybe see them reaching for a backup quarterback in the later rounds, maybe in the 4th round, 5th round, something like that. And just, I don't know if there's even a quarterback in this draft that would make sense there. But their backup is Jake Browning, and I just don't see that being much. And,
No,
Baker has,
I think we already tried that.
I think Baker is reckless enough that he deserves a backup that can maybe do something there. That's something they have to maybe address. It doesn't necessarily have to be a guy to replace Baker. I kind of look at like how the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott when they had Romo. They picked a guy later on that they could work to develop. If he was forced to play, he could maybe do it for a game or two. Not a bad scenario that could maybe turn into something in the future when Baker runs his course.
Yeah, I think, I don't have a guy that would go that late at the top of my head, but it would seem like you'd want somebody in there that just has an arm. You just get somebody, hey, we might need to teach you the finer points of what's going on, but we've got these wide receivers that can stretch the field, and we have a running back that can help take some play action pressure off of you getting ran down. Maybe you look at, hey, here's somebody that's kind of falling down people's boards, but he's got a cannon on him and he's kind of rough around the edges. And you bring somebody like that in and go, hey, start learning from Baker here a little bit about some of the more, finer points of how to deal with defenses and whatnot. So
What
yeah,
would you
I
think
would
is
agree that, I, Baker's not exactly old, but I
no?
have a hard time believing that we have a long time running around for a guy that gets hit this way.
If he fell to the 3rd round, would you entertain Carson back?
But unfortunately, I have this problem that, especially with quarterbacks, when your face just looks like you're thinking about something dumb all the time, I have a hard time believing in you.
Yeah,
And
all
so
right.
I have been a Carson Beck hater since the beginning of the Georgia thing. Just like
Yeah,
when I saw him, I was just like, he just looks like he's thinking about something stupid.
okay.
I just felt like I don't, look, if you're good enough, and he almost was,
Almost.
they were that close to winning a
Almost.
national title. So I'll give him that. I would have never thought when we had the conversations at the beginning of the college season last year, that was one of those teams that I was like, regardless of if they get rolling fast, they're going to figure him out. They're going to put the pressure on him. He's eventually going to stumble. And then he didn't. So,
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard for me to be the person going, hey, don't give him a shot, because I just said the same thing to Miami and they damn near won a chip off of it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
maybe
Well,
he is a guy.
I
You're
get it. I
in
see that
Florida.
that's the kind of guy that I could see behind Baker. Because isn't he like as old as Baker? And he's still been in college? I mean,
I mean,
Jesus.
hell, we're probably closing in on it, to be
Yeah.
perfectly honest.
So,
I
I mean, if
mean,
you look at it, he's coming in as seasoned as you can get, and they need a backup seasoned quarterback And I'm not saying Carson Beck's their future, but if he fell to the 3rd or 4th round even, which maybe he won't, I don't know. But he's the
I
kind of
just I
guy that if I thought he had high draft stock, I think he would have went to the NFL sooner. I just don't think he has high draft
oh
stock. They're like, "Oh, he's a
yeah.
late 2nd rounder." I don't know. Maybe he's 4th rounder.
No, I honestly have not done a lot of deep round draft research yet. I just
No.
assumed he was well down there.
No, they
That
got
it
him
was
like
going to
the
be
5th
one of those
quarterback.
like maybe he gets drafted, maybe he's got to walk on somewhere, sort of thing.
They act like he's the
What
5th best
ESPN's
quarterback.
got him at 82 right now.
Yeah.
So that's fourth, 3rd round, towards the back half of the 3rd round. So
Yeah.
like that seems, you know,
Well, if I'm looking at Jake Browning or Carson Beck, I might take a flyer on this kid.
look,
He at least
if
is a
you want
winner.
to compare them that way, I definitely agree with you that like why not take a run at him?
Yeah.
But for me, I go, you have all these holes in your defense, and then you need to protect your quarterback. So to
Oh,
me, I
they
would
have a lot of
go,
needs. They have a lot of
we've
needs.
got a guy. Well, and just like if you have your quarterback, I was thinking more like some guy in the 5th or 6th round that when they said your name, you'd be like, sounds familiar. Where did he play? Somewhere in the Midwest? Like, that's more like what I was thinking. You
Yeah.
know, some cornfed dude from the North that just, his right arm is twice the size of his left arm because he's just been throwing things with it since he was 4 years old. Like, and you just go, hey, win, not if, win. Baker has to be peeled off the earth and, carried to the blue tent. We're just going to have you just aim at somebody with our colors on, streaking down the field and just see if you can get the ball up and over the defense. And, you know, we'll do the finer things of life, next year sort of thing. But look, hey, Beck clearly does several things well. And so if through the interview process, you feel like the things that I can teach him are the things that he's not the best at yet, then hell, being able to get a guy that was that highly sought after now being down in the 3rd round, if you got the right line of sight to him, it might be reasonable taking a run at him.
Yeah. Now,
It's
I
kind
mean,
of crazy to look as we go down because right below Carson is another guy that was talked about quite a bit and then fell off. We got Nussmeier sitting
oh
there
yeah.
coming out of LSU at like 90. So you start having these guys that have names and they were highly recruited and they were believed in by these elite programs. And obviously those two things diverged wildly where Beck was fine at Georgia and they were successful regardless of how good I think he is. And then he goes to Miami and almost wins. And Nussmeier just kind of steps on his own foot and falls on
Yeah.
his face, going into his last year at LSU. But you have these guys that, like, if you think that you can fix what went wrong or what wasn't elite about them, then hey, they are in a perfect spot to get grabbed up by somebody as a
Yeah.
project.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And for the record, most of the analysis out there isn't really pushing towards quarterback. That jumped off the page at me looking at it going, damn, they don't have much behind Baker and he's injury prone. So that kind of made me go, listen, this is a quarterback driven league in the NFL. You can say anybody can say all they want about, oh, we got to have a better defense. We got more corners. We got to have edge rusher. You can have all that. I don't care if you run out Max Crosby and Trey Hendrickson on the same team backed up by Ray Lewis. If your quarterback is Jake Browning, you're not going to win a game. I don't care.
No, you have to have a real,
You have to have
you
somebody.
know, generational defining defense to overcome a sub average quarterback.
Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation. As much as they want everything to kind of be even, when Baker got hurt, I mean, because some of these losses are not necessarily on Baker. When we go, he won 2 of the last 9 games. He was in and out of a bunch of those games because shoulder and back and ribs and, all this sort of stuff. And then, yeah, they were running Bridgewater out there last year after he left his, high school team that he was coaching for that absolute nonsense that they ran him out of town over. And it turns out that if you have your backup be a guy that basically retired from the NFL, that doesn't work at all.
No. No.
So,
Unless you're Philip Rivers.
well, hey, look, that worked like for
That's what
a
you just
game.
described, right? That you just kept describing that.
Well, that's even crazier that, like, Rivers played during the pandemic and then, like, was almost ready to start drawing his pension and
Oh,
decided to come back. But that is a very unique situation in that he always kind of played like he was coming out of retirement. Like
yeah.
he didn't move around a ton. He was a accuracy and, reading the defense sort of quarterback. He wasn't really that gunslinger type. So, as crazy as it sounded, at least it was, doable,
That's
where
funny.
Bridgewater really was built around being slightly mobile and being
Yeah.
able to, create for himself and then was out of the game for a significant amount of time
Yeah.
and then had to, come back after standing on the sidelines for an entire season.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll go to the division champs.
Division champs.
8-9, the division champs.
Bryce
Carolina
Young
Panthers.
led.
Oh, this is another one, man. Over under set at 6.5. Seriously, they can't even get a touchdown where the wins.
They cannot.
Well,
Though it's
they're
juiced.
slanted to
It's
the
juiced to the over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Minus 150 to the over. They're slanted to the over.
They're getting a little help.
They're getting a little something there. Listen, so here's what they've done. Free agency, they picked up a big time backup right now behind Young. Kenny Pickett signed a 1-year deal. Man, what a train wreck that is. They picked up John Mechie III, which is not a bad pickup on a receiver, and David Moore. That's fine. They've got a couple. Those are a couple
Yeah.
receiver pickups. Their biggest need is probably offensive linemen. They picked up 2 guys, Stone Forsythe, and they signed Luke Forter to be their center out of New Orleans. So they took this center from New Orleans, Luke Forter, and they put him in. They're going to plant him right there, which is not horrible, but they didn't do a lot. They picked up Jansen, Akeem Evans, Isaiah Simmons re-signed. Devin Lloyd signed with the Panthers. That was a pretty big signing, the Devin Lloyd signing. So out of Jacksonville is probably their biggest. They haven't done a lot in free agency that's going to really, to me, make that needle move above 7 yet. Carolina's got the 19th pick. With the 19th pick, I really see them taking a look at offensive linemen. They've got to protect Young. He scrambled for his life. He's not very big. He's going to get the hell beat out of him. His backups are Kenny Pickett and Andy Dalton. So, the Red Rider's still out there shooting bullets. But Kenny Pickett slides into the number 2 hole. They do have Chubba Hubbard coming in to help out. They've got Trevor Etienne, Jonathan Brooks. Not a bad backfield. From a skill position, Tommy Tremble's our tight end. I don't really know, other than Tet McMillan, who they're going to throw the ball to. They've got Jalen Coker, Xavier Legette. Picking up John Mechie helps. They need some, I think, receiver help, but ultimately the offensive line they've got to protect. They got to protect Young the best that they potentially can in this. I don't
Now, do
see
you
them.
think when they're picking out offensive linemen, do you think they line them up and then they do hit the little carrot so they flip the height the other direction?
Yeah,
Try to get some guy with really long arms, but
is
short
short.
enough that Bryce can see up over their shoulders when
Yeah,
he goes to aim downfield.
that's definitely a problem that they're facing. He has to move around to throw in lanes. It's not very good. At the 19th pick, I don't know who's going to fall to him. Maybe Spencer Fanu out of Utah might fall there. But from 19, you may be more like around the Monroe Freeling out of Georgia. He's a run blocker. That's a potential falling into that hole for him. They're going to need to continue that theme throughout, though. They can't just live on one offensive tackle or offensive guard and move on and then say, oh, now we're going to go play with wide receivers and defensive tackles. They need to pick a couple of offensive linemen up in this and solidify the position for the team as they go forward. I don't see them being the team that's going to compete next year. Bryce Young may have hit his ceiling, which isn't bad, but I think his ceiling's 8 to 9 to 10 wins. I don't think we're going to get a whole lot better than that out of this kid. And then the talent that they've got around him is not enough to drive those results. It's just not. They're not that good. So offensive line, wide receiver maybe to pick it up, and then some cornerback depth is what I would look for Carolina. Over under, if New Orleans improves, if Atlanta stays stagnant, Tampa Bay should be the class. I mean, if Tampa Bay wins the whole thing with 9 wins, I mean, does that really put Carolina at 7 wins, 6 wins? Does that put New Orleans at 7, 8 wins? Does that put Atlanta at 7, 8 wins? I mean, are we going to have a completely tied up division again of just
I really
wasteful shit this year?
so while we were going through these four, I went and poked around and found like the schedule's not out, but the opponents are out.
Oh, which
The home
division
and
did they
away.
get? Which division did they get?
So they've got Baltimore, Chicago, Cincinnati, Denver, Detroit, and Seattle at home.
And this is the Panthers.
The Panthers.
Okay.
And then they've got Cleveland, Green Bay, Minnesota, Philly, and Pittsburgh away.
So they picked the NFC North as their opposite division.
Yeah, so they got the North. They've got the East.
Well, they got to play each other 6 times. Then they get the North once. And so then it's based on strength of schedule stuff.
Yeah. So, it's an interesting thing. I wonder, I guess there's probably some math to this.
Yeah.
But depending on the odds, it'd be fun to go see if we could find somebody that would lay some odds for nobody getting more than 7 wins.
Come on, somebody's got to win more than 7.
Why, like you start staring at these and you go, like, okay, like Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Cincinnati may or may not be good. But like when you're mixing in the AFC West, the both Norths into this, you got a lot of teams that can screw up your season. So if you start splitting wins among these guys, and you're going to play 6 games, maybe you win 3, you lose 3, you kind of have this weird mix, and then you just start getting beat by these other divisions.
Where are they going to pick up 4
really
other
have
wins?
any? Huh?
Say they all split 50-50. They're all 6-6 after playing each other. Where are they going to pick up 5 wins to get to 8?
Well,
they all beat Cleveland, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like Cleveland should be easy pickings. Cincinnati's going to lose some games. Vegas is in there, like regardless of whether Mendoza's a hit and they're going to lose plenty of games, like with a rookie quarterback. Excuse me, but this is kind of framing up to be like a Baker Mayfield, Travis Etienne injury away from dudes fighting for 7 wins to win the division, right? Like we could
Yeah.
have a truly amazing win
Baker
total
could
here.
screw that up though and win 13 games
No,
himself.
without a doubt. But no, you would need some strong odds because 7 that's a historical F up.
I bet you can find. You said something earlier. I think you said 30 wins combined.
Yeah.
Where are they?
Uh-huh.
Is that what they're at when you add them up?
Uh-huh.
I bet you could bet the over under of the division,
You
the
can
South.
do that. I know that I was listening to Bill Simmons, cousin Sal, kind of
Yeah.
talk about these win-loss or these win total release, and I think they kind of made mention, and I think last year they bet that division to not win more than, I think the number at that time was 32 games, and they ended up with 30 wins last year. That's what they landed on. So they did the exact. They got no better or no worse. They are dead nuts on top of what the projected win total is right now for next
And
year.
what's that total? 30?
30. Yeah.
Okay.
So, which is
Is
a fun
that's the
round number
worst in the
also.
NFL, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna go find that. I think
Um,
I need to bet that.
yeah, I imagine that's got to be out there, especially on one of the more recreation, DraftKings or FanDuel, I'm sure has win totals per division over unders that can be bet.
Yeah.
And even with, in spite of, really, because 3 of the 4 of these guys are juiced to the over right now. So to go, hey, I'll take under 30, there should be a fun number out there that's playing against that.
Yeah.
Again, you're making bets in March that don't pay off until the middle of January. So it's more for fun than anything. But I do think that it makes for a very interesting number when we get this thing started and we look at all 4 of these teams and you go, hey, there are interesting storylines for all 4 teams. But ultimately, if they do exactly what everybody thinks they're going to do,
Yeah.
Tampa could easily win this division with 8 wins again, and everybody be considerable. Your Bryce Young going back to being 2024 Bryce Young away from, regardless if Tampa has a good season, being well under those 30 games. I mean,
Yeah.
if Carolina wins 3 games, you're under 30 regardless of
Yeah.
whether one team jumps off and gets 10 wins,
Yeah. That's impressive.
because 2 of these teams are going to be middling.
That's
There's really no
impressively
way
bad.
around it.
That's impressively
Yeah.
bad. God. Well, I'm sure our viewers are happy that we started with the worst division, so we get this shit behind us. So now we can talk
Yeah, we're
about
going to
good
build
football
up.
going forward. Well, we're going to talk about
Uh-huh.
the division that housed the AFC champions next week, and it's really maybe the next worst because of Miami and New York.
Uh-huh.
Arguably, we'll talk through those and then see what Buffalo and New England can bring to the table. Brandon, I think that wraps up our review of the NFC South. I think that we'll touch on these guys a little bit more as we get into our draft previews. I'm looking forward to see how this kind of narrows down and shakes out and who the free agent signings are. But overall, good review. I think my prediction at this point is under 30 wins. And based on what you've told me, with no draft picks selected yet, I'm picking the Saints to win the division. Worst to first.
I like that. I think that is at the very least a fun way to go into looking at a bad division.
Yeah. Why not? Somebody always goes worst to first in the NFL. Why not the Saints?
Well,
If they have a
especially
good
when it's
draft,
clustered like this. Yeah.
if they have a good
Plus, they have
draft,
a
why not?
history of figuring out how to win games with basically no defense.
And they got a great fan base.
So,
So they can
yeah,
get loud and noisy, and they can cause some home field advantage issues for teams.
yes, that is always the upside to when you get into the season and start looking at places to grab some extra points is them playing at home against some teams that are maybe not as good as people think they are.
Right. Absolutely. All right. Well, hey, we're the St. Louis Syndicate. I'm Nate. He's Brandon. We'll see you guys next week for our next review.
Cheers.